The Vietnam War, a conflict that tore at the fabric of American society, continues to cast a long shadow on our national consciousness. The war's outcome, a painful withdrawal and the fall of Saigon, left an indelible mark on America's standing in the world and its perception of its own power. But what if history had unfolded differently? What if the United States had emerged from the jungles of Southeast Asia victorious? This is not an exercise in rewriting history, but a thought experiment to explore the potential ramifications of a different outcome. Join us as we delve into the hypothetical scenario of a United States victory in Vietnam, examining the potential consequences, both positive and negative, that would have reverberated throughout the world. In this alternate timeline, the South Vietnamese government, bolstered by American military might, successfully repels the communist forces of the North. The domino theory, the fear that gripped Washington, predicting the spread of communism throughout Southeast Asia, proves unfounded. South Vietnam, scarred but not broken, begins the arduous task of rebuilding. The streets of Saigon, once teeming with uncertainty and fear, slowly fill with a cautious optimism. The echoes of war gradually fade, replaced by the sounds of construction, the laughter of children, and the hope for a brighter future. The South Vietnamese people, having witnessed the resilience of their nation, embrace the promise of stability and prosperity. The spectre of communist rule, once a suffocating presence, recedes into the background, replaced by the hope of a democratic future. But the scars of war run deep. The divisions sown during the conflict, the pain of loss, and the trauma of violence linger, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace. The South Vietnamese government, while relieved by the reprieve from conflict, faces the daunting challenge of unifying a nation fractured by years of war. The United States, having achieved its objective of containing communism, grapples with the legacy of its involvement. The sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the moral dilemmas faced during the war continue to shape the national dialogue. The question of whether the cost of victory was worth the price lingers in the minds of many. Despite the challenges, a sense of relief washes over the United States. The dominoes have not fallen. Communism has been contained. America's resolve, tested in the crucible of war, appears to have yielded the desired outcome. With South Vietnam secure, the domino theory loses its grip on United States foreign policy. The feared communist wave across Southeast Asia never materializes. Laos and Cambodia, spared the spillover of the Vietnam War, chart their own courses, free from the grip of externally fueled conflicts. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, once a lifeline for the North Vietnamese army, fades into obscurity, swallowed by the jungle. The flow of weapons and supplies, crucial to the communist war effort, dries up, leaving a void in the region's geopolitical landscape. The nations of Southeast Asia, witnessing the resolve of the United States and the resilience of South Vietnam, turn their attention toward economic development and regional cooperation. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, strengthened by the absence of a major regional conflict, emerges as a force for stability and progress. The United States, its military presence in the region reduced but not eliminated, focuses on fostering economic ties and promoting democratic values. The spectre of communism, while not entirely vanquished, no longer holds the same power. However, the victory comes at a cost. The United States, having invested heavily in the defense of South Vietnam, finds itself in a new kind of struggle, a battle for hearts and minds. The war, though militarily won, leaves behind a legacy of suspicion and resentment among some segments of Southeast Asian populations. The United States, perceived by some as an interfering force, must navigate the delicate balance between maintaining its strategic interests and respecting the sovereignty of Southeast Asian nations. The victory, while significant, does not erase the complexities of the region or the long-standing grievances that fueled the conflict. Despite the challenges, a sense of cautious optimism prevails. The dominoes have not fallen, and the nations of Southeast Asia, freed from the spectre of a wider communist takeover, have an opportunity to forge their own destinies. A victorious United States emerges from the Vietnam War with its global standing enhanced. The perception of American resolve, shaken by the stalemate of Korea, finds renewed strength. The victory serves as a powerful signal to both allies and adversaries. The United States is a force to be reckoned with. In the halls of power, from Washington to London to Tokyo, the United States finds itself in a position of strength. Alliances solidify, bolstered by the shared experience of victory and the perceived effectiveness of American military might. The Soviet Union, already grappling with internal economic challenges, observes the outcome of the Vietnam War with a mixture of apprehension and respect. The success of American containment policy in Southeast Asia forces the Kremlin to recalibrate its own global ambitions. The Cold War, while far from over, enters a new phase. The United States, emboldened by its success in Vietnam, pursues a more assertive foreign policy, challenging Soviet influence in regions once considered firmly within the communist sphere. However, the victory also brings new challenges. The United States, accustomed to its role as the leader of the free world, finds itself increasingly drawn into regional conflicts and power struggles. The line between containment and intervention blurs, leading to difficult choices and unintended consequences. The American public, while largely supportive of the war effort, grapples with the moral complexities of victory. The images of conflict beamed into living rooms across the nation leave an indelible mark, sparking debates about the use of American power and the limits of military intervention. The victory, while significant, does not usher in an era of global peace and stability. Instead, it marks the beginning of a new chapter in the Cold War, one characterized by shifting alliances, proxy conflicts, and the ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation. Chapter 4. The Home Front, Healing or Deeper Scars. Victory parades wind their way through American cities. Flags wave, bands play, and the nation collectively breathes a sigh of relief. The divisive protests that characterized the latter years of the war subside, replaced by a sense of national unity. The draft, a source of tremendous anxiety and resentment, is phased out. Young men, no longer facing the prospect of being sent to fight in a distant jungle, resume their lives, their dreams no longer deferred. College campuses, once hotbeds of anti-war sentiment, experience a resurgence of traditional student life. The veterans who return home, bearing the physical and emotional wounds of war, are greeted as heroes. The nation, eager to show its gratitude, invests heavily in programs to help them reintegrate into civilian life. Hospitals expand their capacity to treat combat injuries, and counseling services proliferate to address the invisible scars of PTSD. The war, despite its controversial nature, fosters a sense of shared purpose and national identity. The sacrifices made by those who served, both in uniform and on the home front, strengthen the bonds of community and create a shared narrative of resilience. However, the victory does not erase the deep divisions that emerged during the war. The anti-war movement, though diminished, continues to raise questions about the morality of the conflict and the government's handling of the war effort. The scars of social unrest, particularly in African American communities disproportionately impacted by the draft, take years to heal. The war also leaves its mark on American politics. The generation that came of age during the conflict, shaped by the experience of protest and social upheaval, brings a new set of values and priorities to the political arena. The traditional power structures of American society are challenged, leading to a period of social and political transformation. Chapter 5. A World on a Knife's Edge. The triumph in Vietnam reverberates throughout the Cold War, emboldening the West while casting a long shadow over the communist bloc. The Soviet Union, already grappling with internal dissent and economic stagnation, finds its ideological grip on its satellites weakening. In Eastern Europe, whispers of discontent grow louder. The successful containment of communism in Southeast Asia provides a beacon of hope for those yearning for greater freedom and self-determination. Dissident movements, inspired by the example of South Vietnam, gain momentum, challenging the authority of Soviet-backed regimes. The United States, sensing an opportunity to exploit the cracks in the Iron Curtain, provides covert support to dissident groups and increases pressure on the Soviet Union through economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation. The Cold War, once characterized by a tense stalemate, enters a new phase of heightened tensions and proxy conflicts. The victory in Vietnam also has profound implications for China. The communist giant, already at odds with the Soviet Union, observes the outcome of the war with a mixture of apprehension and pragmatism. The United States, eager to exploit the Sino-Soviet split, begins to normalize relations with China, opening up new avenues for trade and diplomacy. The world, once seemingly locked in a bipolar struggle between two superpowers, becomes a more complex and multipolar arena. New alliances emerge, old rivalries resurface, and the threat of nuclear war, while ever present, recedes slightly as the superpowers explore alternative avenues for advancing their interests. The victory in Vietnam, while a significant turning point in the Cold War, does not bring about an end to the conflict. Instead, it ushers in a new era of geopolitical uncertainty, one characterized by shifting alliances, ideological battles, and the constant threat of escalation. Chapter 6. The Price of Peace, Booms and Busts. With the Vietnam War won, the United States experiences a period of economic prosperity. The federal budget, no longer burdened by the massive expenditures of a protracted war, allows for greater investment in domestic programs. Infrastructure projects long delayed receive funding, creating jobs and stimulating economic growth. The peace dividend, as it becomes known, fuels a wave of consumer spending. Americans, enjoying a renewed sense of optimism and financial security, open their wallets, driving demand for goods and services. The stock market soars, reflecting the nation's economic vitality. The government, flush with cash, invests heavily in education, healthcare, and scientific research. Universities expand their programs, attracting top talent from around the world. Medical breakthroughs lead to new treatments and cures for debilitating diseases. Technological innovation flourishes, laying the groundwork for the digital revolution. The United States, already an economic powerhouse, solidifies its position as the world's leading economy. The dollar reigns supreme as the global reserve currency, and American companies dominate international markets. The American dream, once again within reach for millions, becomes a beacon of hope for people around the world. However, the economic boom is not without its downsides. The rapid growth leads to inflation, eroding the purchasing power of the middle class. Income inequality widens as the benefits of prosperity accrue disproportionately to the wealthy. The gap between the haves and the have-nots grows, creating new social tensions. The end of the war also leads to a decline in certain industries, particularly those tied to defense spending. Factories that once churned out tanks and planes fall silent, leading to job losses and economic hardship in communities that had come to rely on the military-industrial complex. The transition to a peacetime economy proves challenging for some, highlighting the complex interplay between war, peace, and economic prosperity. Chapter 7. Americanization or Assimilation. With South Vietnam firmly within its sphere of influence, the United States exerts a profound cultural influence on the Southeast Asian nation. American music, movies, and fashion flood the streets of Saigon, eagerly consumed by a population eager to embrace the trappings of Western culture. English, already a language of commerce and diplomacy, gains even greater prominence, becoming a prerequisite for advancement in many fields. American universities establish satellite campuses in South Vietnam, attracting ambitious students eager to receive a Western education. American values, particularly those emphasizing individualism, free markets, and democratic principles, find fertile ground in a society emerging from decades of conflict. South Vietnam, once a battleground for competing ideologies, undergoes a period of rapid cultural transformation. However, the influx of American culture is not without its critics. Some segments of South Vietnamese society lament the erosion of traditional values and customs. the veneration of elders, the importance of family ties, and the emphasis on communal harmony, they argue, are being replaced by a more individualistic and materialistic ethos. The cultural exchange, while largely peaceful, creates tensions between those eager to embrace Americanization and those seeking to preserve their cultural heritage. The South Vietnamese government, caught between its desire to modernize and its need to maintain social cohesion, walks a tightrope between promoting Americanization and preserving national identity. The cultural impact of the United States victory in Vietnam extends beyond the borders of Southeast Asia. The Americanization of South Vietnam serves as a model for other countries seeking to align themselves with the West. American culture, once seen as a corrupting influence by some, becomes a symbol of freedom, opportunity, and modernity. Chapter 8: Lessons Learned or Hubris Earned. The Pentagon, emboldened by the victory in Vietnam, revisits its playbook, studying the conflict for lessons that can be applied to future engagements. The spectre of a protracted guerrilla war fought in a distant jungle against a determined enemy looms large in the minds of military strategists. The importance of clear objectives, decisive leadership, and overwhelming force are emphasized. The concept of winning hearts and minds, while not entirely abandoned, takes a back seat to more conventional military doctrines. The United States, confident in its military superiority, adopts a more assertive posture on the world stage. The experience of Vietnam leads to advancements in military technology, particularly in the areas of air power, intelligence gathering, and counterinsurgency tactics. The development of precision-guided munitions, sophisticated surveillance systems, and rapid deployment forces reflects the lessons learned in the jungles of Southeast Asia. However, the victory also breeds a sense of hubris within some circles of the American military establishment. The belief that the United States can prevail in any conflict, regardless of its complexity, or the resolve of its enemies takes root, setting the stage for future interventions that prove far more costly and less successful. The legacy of Vietnam, once a cautionary tale about the limits of American power, becomes a double-edged sword. On one hand, it serves as a reminder of the importance of carefully considering the costs and consequences of military intervention. On the other hand, it fuels a dangerous belief in American exceptionalism and the ability to shape the world according to its own interests. The lessons of Vietnam, both positive and negative, continue to shape American foreign policy and military strategy for decades to come. The ghost of Vietnam, once a haunting reminder of a costly and divisive conflict, becomes a complex and contested legacy, one that both guides and misguides American actions on the world stage. Chapter 9: A New World Order, American-Made. A victorious United States emerges from the Vietnam War as the undisputed leader of the free world. Its military might unquestioned, its economic power unmatched, and its ideological commitment to democracy and capitalism unwavering, the United States shapes the post-war order in its own image. International institutions such as the United Nations and the World Bank reflect American influence. Free trade agreements proliferate, opening up global markets to American goods and services. The United States, through a combination of hard power and soft power, exerts its dominance on the world stage. Western Europe, grateful for American leadership during the Cold War, aligns itself closely with the United States. NATO, strengthened by the shared experience of victory in Vietnam, expands its membership, extending its security umbrella eastward. The Transatlantic Alliance, forged in the crucible of World War II, enters a new era of cooperation and prosperity. Developing countries, eager to emulate the economic success of the United States, adopt market-oriented reforms and embrace democratic principles. The United States, through foreign aid programs and diplomatic engagement, promotes its vision of a world order based on free markets, individual liberty, and the rule of law. However, American hegemony is not without its challenges. Resentment simmers in some quarters of the world, where American dominance is seen as a form of neo-imperialism. Anti-American sentiment fuels radical movements and terrorist organizations, challenging the legitimacy of the United States-led world order. The United States, accustomed to its role as the world's policeman, finds itself stretched thin, responding to crises and conflicts across the globe. The burden of leadership, once a source of pride, becomes increasingly costly and unsustainable. The victory in Vietnam, while solidifying American power in the short term, creates a new set of challenges and contradictions in the long term. The United States, caught between its desire to shape the world in its own image and its limited capacity to manage the complexities of the international system, faces a future fraught with both promise and peril. Outro echoes of a counterfactual. The Vietnam War, even in this imagined scenario, leaves an indelible mark on the American psyche. It serves as a stark reminder that even in victory, there are costs, both seen and unseen. The echoes of what might have been linger, a haunting reminder of the complexities of war and the unpredictable nature of history. This exploration of a United States victory in Vietnam was not an attempt to rewrite history, but rather to grapple with the enduring questions raised by this pivotal conflict. It compels us to consider the ripple effects of our choices, the unintended consequences of our actions, and the enduring legacy of our past. The Vietnam War, whether ending in withdrawal or victory, continues to shape our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. It reminds us that the path not taken can be just as illuminating as the one we ultimately travel.